Joining us for the ride. And I hope that you will enjoy this evening. So
yes.
Now the floor is yours.
Okay, so a big thank you, Jacqueline, for organizing this presentation. I'm thrilled, and of course Robert and Joe. I'm so glad you are here because I'm really I really want to exchange with you guys. So tonight I'm going to explain to you how I implement my thinking in my art. So I really want to establish the architecture of my thinking to connect with people. Instead of having a book, I'm creating a painting and then installations and video for another dimension, but really to have a connection and to open the minds of people around me in a different way, not in the to see the world in a different way, in a disruptive way. So I'm going to explain to you tonight how I proceed, especially to develop a painting, because it's really the way I start to explore my concepts. So currently I'm working on a series called Now You Know. And I wanted to tackle the structural power within the society through an algorithmic vision. And in this series, Now You Know, you have a subcategory called the island. And what I've done, I took the concept of the French philosopher Michel Foucault to develop the concept of heterotopias, which are, if you know his concept, are the other space within the society, like asylums, prisons, churches, and I implemented this concept into a dematerialized world. So you have a physical entity, and you have a dematerialized world, which is the mirror of the physical entity. And I didn't want, it's called the island, I'm going to do 10 islands. I already have achieved 8 of them. And I didn't want to develop the concept of utopias because first they do not exist, which is not the case of heterotopias. And second, if you develop an utopia, it's the dystopia for somebody else. So the way I'm doing, so this is like you can see some of the paintings, and I'm going to explain to you how I develop those paintings, stage after stage, layers after layers. And I'm going to present you the island number 5, the castle. So I always start with a background, and the background is made of acrylic. It's almost perfect. Like I'm really, even if I put some layers of drawings, collages on the top, it needs to be perfect because first it takes time, so it gives you the time of reflection, and second, it's almost a process of manufacturing. The way I proceed is I always take photos that I implement inside the painting in a manner of a very, I would say, like abstract way. So for this one, you have 2 parts. So on the left side, I took a photo of an IKEA store, and it's related to the consumption. And I like the idea of the IKEA store, especially in the US, because it's a foreign store. Regarding the income of people, like everybody goes there, it's not like Walmart, you have the subconscious, like even if it's not true, but it's more for low-income people. IKEA is pretty open. And what I've done, the photo has been taken by the cashier register, so it's the first step, like you have the card, so it's the physical entity of people buying furniture, buying things to nourish their physical entity. And then you are by the cash register, which is the first stage of dematerialization, the way you pay. When you pay, like I think around 95% of people pay with credit cards, not with real money or cash. So it's like a kind of symbolic, it's really basic, but I wanted to do that, and it's really, so it's the attention of consumers also, because if you go somewhere or if you go to a store, you might go online to search what you want, so you might start to be directed. So it's the first stage of dematerialization, of course, and this kind of dematerialization is driven by algorithm. So on the other side, I use the castle. So first, the castle. And for me, it's really the dematerialized entity. So it comes from the organization of society in the medieval time. So you have the castle, you have the king and queens, it's basic. King and queens, the castle, you have the people around, like in the on the bottom of the castle, it's a symbiose, like the castle protects the people work for the castle. And for me, the idea of the castle was a centralization, which is quite important because as human within the society, we have the tendency to get attracted by the central power. And for me, the castle represents the entity where all the data are driven to. So if you think, and those data are fed by the other side, the physical entity. So I don't know if you follow me, but you have the physical entity we consume, and you think about the castle, the central entity, the central power, and you can relate to Google, Facebook, Amazon. When you act, you feed them with the data. And so it's like a symbiose because, of course, for the sake of productiveness as a human entity, you use those data driven by this central entity. But also, it's like a shifting, like you have, and it's made by algorithms, of course. Society is changing slightly but surely. I don't think it's a good or bad way. It is what it is. So this is the basic concept of when I start a painting. I have all those ideas, boom, I'm doing the background. And then what I'm doing, I add collages. I did a collages of megalopolis, cities of the future. So I went online and one day I found an article about a guy who took algorithm to develop the cities of how algorithm would see the cities of the future, the megalopolis of the future. So I was like, wow, it's great, it's amazing. So I took his idea, not his photos, and I took some photos of high-rise buildings, and I completely transformed them, and for me they were like the symbolic of the megalopolis. So it's also linked, and you go back to the castle, to the vertical power, central power, and you have a kind of verticality, and it's also linked to the territoriality, the fact that we have the tendency to go more and more into the big cities instead of spreading horizontally all over the territory. We go, like we concentrate ourselves. The second layer. And the third layer, I use ink and marker to draw networks. So it's distributed networks, centralized network, and decentralized networks. And they are not, so I use, it's related of course to computers and to the fact that it's a grid of networks. And then I develop those drawings in an artistic manner, like to go beyond and to go to the future. So I put those drawings everywhere in all of my paintings. And at the really end, you have, and you can see it here much better, a shape. So you have two types of shapes. It's made of acrylic, it dries very fast, so you need to do it like in less than 5 minutes. And I have like waves, like you can see here. The waves have two symbols. First, it's how society is shaped and shifts slightly but surely. You can't really see it, so it makes me think about the sea curving the shore. And then second, it's like a veil. You have waves and you have geometrical shapes. And the geometrical shapes, for me, are linked to patterns, geometrical patterns, because we need, and it's linked to the castle, it's linked to the central power. that the fact we like to relate on certain shapes we see and their recurrence. So this is it for the, like, how I proceed. And so this is the island, and I want to show you very quickly, and you can ask me any kind of questions after that. You can come to the studio. I will be happy to take my time to describe everything. But each island has a particular topic. The first island, the dematerialized vertical heterotopia, like you can see, it's always, you have always a wide, large band, physical entity, dematerialized entity, mirroring, and for this one, I use this shape, and for me it's like a propaganda, and it's not a political propaganda, it's like what I said before, it's how algorithms and the way we interact with them are slightly but surely we shift the way we see the world, and it's not bad. It's the way it is. It's for our own sake. Like if you want to do something, it goes much faster if you use an algorithm to tell you, okay, take this road or go get by this product. And if you want to be disruptive, you don't use them or you try to mess with them. But so it's a kind of propaganda, and I think for me, it's, I don't know, but if you go a little bit deeper, it's like how consciousness is changing. The second one is the vertical mobility. So for example, so it's about mobility, how our physical entity will be like with the dematerialized entity, because for me you really have yourself in a dematerialized world, and you can relate to the social credit in China. It's like the historic credit here, like for money, but in China it's for your social entity. And it's, so this one, oh sorry, it's the mobility. So what I've done, I took a photo of a train station that I completely transformed, and I'm asking the question of mobility of the future. So this social credit in China, for example, you have a certain, so it's going to be implemented in 2020, it started in 2015, and for example, you have a certain amount of points. If you get bankrupt, you lose those points, and you can't use certain transportation. For example, you cannot use planes, or you cannot use bullet trains. So, and it does exist. That's why we are in an heterotopia and not in an utopia. So the mobility and how, and on the other side, it's the verticality of the cities. This one is truth-telling, so are we able to see the reality? So it's linked to Plato's, the allegory of the cave. So it's the reflection, the self-reflection on the two sides. This one, sustainability, about energy, electrical power. I do not hear anything, and I need to concentrate more on this. But for me, we might have a bit trouble with electricity in the future, I don't know, but the other side is the border. So it's the liquid citizenship. And liquid citizenship is how you can buy a dematerialized citizenship, and it does exist in Ukraine. You can buy a dematerialized citizenship. When I started the series Now You Know, I wanted, like I said at the beginning, to tackle each structural power. So first, through always an algorithmic thinking. So the first one is law and regulation. This is the Supreme Court, and it's how algorithms can predict the behavior of the Supreme Court at 72%. So it asks the question about the fact we do we want to act, to take certain risks if we know already the results? So it's linked to our behavior, to the fact that we want to fight for something. The second one is about borders, the oracle at the gates. How Canada use now artificial intelligence in the process of immigration. So it asks the question about the fact that you do not have any empathy, and I guess, Robert, you know a lot about this, about the algorithm, bias algorithms, but as human we are biased also, so it's a lot of questioning. One is housing, so it's really related to the housing process. So, and also you can relate to blockchain technology to record transactions. So all those kind of matters. And I won't go deep in details, but you can ask me questions after, or you have a kind of explanation on my on the small brochure I printed. One is more the philosophical stage. So I've done 3 paintings about the allegory of the cave. So I guess everybody knows about it, or if you don't, Google it. And I translate. Thank you. And or you can, yeah. So what I've done, I took a photo of a house with large windows and in the middle of nowhere, and those windows are blocked by the translation in binary code, so 0, 1 of the allegory of the cave. So it asks the question about the language, the semantic, all of these things. And are we willing to see the reality, the algorithmic reality? This is it for the paintings, and then I developed videos. So this one is a video I've done. You can go on YouTube online, you Google my name and you will find it. I have a video channel so you can watch it. I use reasoning ad absurdum because I think Beckett and Waiting for Godot is really, if you see it deeply, it tells a lot. So I love the absurdum thinking, but see it, you will understand. And it's like on the bottom, you have the physical body, and we are already dematerialized on the top. And then I did mechanism of forgetfulness, so it's related to niche. It's how you enforce algorithms, and you have to forget the past to move forward. And it's made of 2 metal sticks. And this one, I really like it. I have an open studio night, October the 18th. I did an immersive installation. It's a small scale, but I did an algorithm for real, a physical algorithm. It doesn't exist, but I'm an artist, so I can do whatever I want. And it's related to also to Plato's allegory of the cave. So I did this physical algorithm with metal bars and ribbons, and in the Plato's cave is like, you can't see the very basic notion is like you can't see the reality because you see the projection of the reality of the fire on the wall. And I changed the fire I did 2 videos, I used video projectors, so it's already dematerialized, and I did a projection of this physical entity, which is not physical, so it's like layers of dematerialization. And also, if you come over, you can see you have small frames with the name of the type of algorithms, and it's for real. It's not, I didn't invent the names, and it's like they have already their own personality. So it asks questions for the future. So my conclusion: don't be compliant and learn to be like with layers, like an algorithm, like layers, and be disruptive. So this is it. And what I've done is just stop. Yes, I did a small video, 9 months of my creative life. Each photo lasts 3 seconds. You have a lot, you will see. I'm pretty productive. And I loved it because, it's not because it's my work, it's because it's related to time. And it's 3 seconds, and for an algorithm or artificial intelligence, it's an eternity. So just to come for the conclusion. And it's on Instagram, so if you have Instagram, you can follow. This is it. Okay.
Why I've invited a sociologist and a mathematician.
I came in with, I won't ask them all now because I want to respect everybody's time, but I came in with 4 questions. Now I have 5. But I think I'll only ask 1 for now, and then we'll see Joe, and then maybe I'll add in questions as we get a larger discussion. But I thought I have some general questions and then some questions specific about works. Maybe I'll ask one of my general questions, which is particularly the idea of Foucault, borrowing Foucault's or utilizing Foucault's idea of heterotopias. Now, I'm already familiar with Foucault's work and use it. I like to think with Foucault in my work. But heterotopias is something I wasn't familiar with, but I went and read his piece, I believe it's called Of Other Spaces, where he theorizes and thinks through heterotopias. I'm not sure how many people in here have, so I thought one thing I might propose is, if you're willing to maybe develop or talk a little bit more about Foucault's idea of heterotopias, or if it's more useful, how you utilize Foucault's, how it informs your work. And in particular, I thought in the reading by Foucault of Other Spaces, he has a 3rd principle of heterotopias that for some reason stuck out as particularly maybe relevant to your work, but I could be missing the mark. And the 3rd principle of heterotopias for Foucault is he sees heterotopias as this real existing spaces, yet inverting commonalities in society. He sees them as capable of juxtaposing in a single real place multiple spaces or sites that are themselves incompatible. And I don't know why, but for some reason I felt like some of your pieces maybe are doing that very thing. But that may or may not be generative, but could you tell us a little bit of how Foucault's concept of heterotopias is generative in your work?
Yes, and you are completely right. And I've read his paper about other spaces. And the way I proceed, when I read something, I don't go too deep. I just take the essence, and then I develop my own concept, which can be quite the same. But I like first, like you said, that it does exist, and second, that you have this kind of game of neurons, of like you have, it's like ocean dogs. It's like you have several spaces, because, and it's always like society, it's just not one idea, one concept, and it's like also in the paintings, and Jacqueline was mentioning that before, where you stand, the painting will shift. So I like to have this idea of each of us, we see things differently, we have a different, even if you have a concept which is established, this concept you don't know how, it's never like, and it's related to the mobility, to the, and I think in math you have this, it's not settled. I think you have like, it's the permeability of things. That's why you have the multiple spaces. But I like to develop things because it's not, you see in 2 dimensions. You read something, it's 2 dimensions. For me, I read something, boom, 3 dimensions, 4 dimensions. And it has been hard for me for many, many years because like people were like, okay, you should write a book. And I was, no, I'm not a writer. I see things. I see, that's why I do paintings, and also to implement the thinking of the past, because I'm really into the past at any level, like historically speaking, socially speaking, demographically speaking. I like to go to the past, present, and then I have a vision of the future. Even if it's completely strange, I follow this kind of vision and I implement it in my paintings. And I really love, like when I've read his short because it's not long about the other space and heterotopias. I was really driven by this.
Questions that are, some I kind of had before I came and some developed over time with your presentation. So one thing that struck me was that in math we have visualizations, but they're very private, and it's very hard to like show what the image we have in our mind when we write down a list of definitions and statements and theorems, and it's very formulaic, and to the outside observer or someone that hasn't had the mathematical training, it's completely impenetrable. And for you, it's almost like the reverse, where you have all of the concepts and ideas on paper, which is visually very appealing, and as humans we just consume with our eyes most traditionally, but there are so many different levels and layers that are there, and it's clear that even if I was like a historian and knew all of the philosophy that I would need to know, that I could just understand that from a single painting. And so I was curious what you view your role as in communicating the ideas behind your artwork, or is it just subjective for the person to pick up on? But since you are presenting a social commentary, it's clear that you want to actually express something, and how do you express or feel like what you've expressed in your artwork is getting through to the viewer?
For me, the first thing is, with a painting you make a connection. And as soon as I make a connection with someone, even if it's just the first layer, you started the connection. So it's a first step. It's like you can't, it's like a 500 pages book, and you can't ask everybody to read all those kind of books. So I guess for me, doing the paintings, like you have an attraction, like a visual attraction, and nowadays, because more and more it's not all about images and less about reading things. So you make a first connection, and then if people like what they see, they might ask questions, they might not, but it's, and I guess you have collectors here, they will tell you they discover something new each time, even if it's subjective to their own personality, but it's, for me, it's societal organization. So if it's subjective to the person, to the viewer, at least he will have a kind of organization compared to his self as an entity. So you know what I mean? It's like the painting that evaluates, but it's still societal organization. So it's still something which has a structure. And then, if you want to know more, you can ask me, but, and I move on. And so for me, it's like I tackle a matter and then I move to something else. But I always write about the painting, so people know they can check about the writing. But it's, I think nowadays it's really good because it makes the first connection. And it's like the book cover. If you have a book, you want to, I don't know what to read. I remember when I was like a teen, you go to the store, the bookstore, and you're like, oh, I like the cover. I think it's it's not too far from it.
So I think I will just make a comment to ask a question to relate your comment. You know, when I first went to the gallery, so she had an exhibition, I think it was in August or July?
April, May time.
Yeah. So I was in front of a painting, and I'm like, oh, that's nice shiny colors. Then I went around with a glass of champagne, then came back, and I was further away. Oh my God, I missed all of that. And then I saw a door. Might have been the champagne. But then I went back again, closer, and then I kept on changing. So I think this is paintings are very relational. You create a relationship with I was about to say the product, with a painting, but at the same time, the relation is going to change with space. Your own space, but also maybe for collectors with time. And the more you see, So if you like music, first shiny colors, then you will see something in a corner that you haven't noticed. And I think that's why for me this is really societal, because us as human can understand. We may not see the same thing immediately, but then I'm like, oh, a door, we all seen a door. So there's this kind of relationship, and this is what I kind of liked.
I'm going to actually bookend that comment, and this pulls a little bit from my particular area of research. Is in your title you have an algorithmic future, which I thought was really, really interesting, because I see a tension between algorithmic future and artistic visions and human futures, plural, because in the realm of algorithmic prediction that your piece Requiem for the Olympus directly engages with, where you know that algorithms can now predict in advance Supreme Court decisions with 72% accuracy, and how they're increasingly, you say in the future, but actually that future is here now, where they're using criminal risk predictions to determine like sentencing or probation, parole requirements, et cetera, but algorithms that are for prediction in these realms, in the legal and the criminal justice realm, they predict singular future. Person, Supreme Court will decide X, or they will decide Y. A person will offend or will not offend. Now they predict with uncertainty, of course, right? It's risk management, so it always encompasses uncertainty, but nonetheless the prediction must be of a singular future. But I feel like your artistic visions in general and your artistic visions in particular in these various paintings, or even in a single painting, depending on how you change where you stand or how much champagne you've drunk, or a variety of factors, aren't a singular vision envisioning a single future. They're engaging with the multiplicity and the unpredictability of the future. So algorithmic prediction can only imagine one future, albeit with uncertainty, while your work is disrupting that by showing us multiple possibilities and multiple futures. I found that tension in your work absolutely fascinating.
For me, in a global, I think and if you go back to the philosopher, that it's the consciousness of people, of the society, which is shifting, changing. And we do not realize that, of course, because we are in it. So, and it's related to time also. Like before in the 40s, the future was further. Now, between now and the future, it goes closer. So you can imagine the society, but it's really the implementation. And it is what it is. You can't, and now we can't get rid of all the algorithmic thinking. We are in it. So we need, and that's why I'm doing the paintings also, and all of this topic is that we need to manage it, to understand it, to know where we are going to, like to be aware of our environment, and especially like in your domain of expertise, as a single entity, if you are in front of a court, you know this court will be managed by algorithms, and you need to understand that if you have flows, you need to know how to react, because it's automatization. So you need to understand how automatization works also. So it's things like that. And it's really tricky because it's so diverse. Like you need to take all those different elements and put them together. And I think also art is the only area you are completely free. So I can do anything. I have a playground, like I can do anything because nobody will say or will judge me because I'm an artist. First, nobody is an artist. If you do a nice painting or but so that's why I really like it and like the multiplicity.
So I will have Joe and then.
Oh, yes.
So the last comment I wanted to make was that the dimensionality of your paintings really struck me because there are so many layers, and I thought it was interesting how it relates to the fact that our lives are being produced by consuming videos and images in a very accessible way. And you drew Jackie with your bright colors, and your training as an artist gives like hooks that draw us in, but But then as we look deeper, there's actual meaning, and you haven't sort of said like, this is bad, you've just presented, there are these societal things that are going on, maybe they're worth thinking a little bit more about, and I really enjoyed
because it's facts. It's facts. It's like, and I don't want to be too narrative or too like expressionist, like, okay, this is bad or good, because if you go deep, every situation has different, it's like a Rubik cube.
Yeah.
You take an idea and in every sense. And that's why you need to really be open, especially nowadays where algorithms are for the sake of productivity through social media drives you in a certain pattern, like because we have the tendency to go to our comfort zone of thinking. So we need to do the contrary and to take one idea and to switch the idea or to switch the situation in every angle. It's really important.
So, Émilie, when you're building your painting, you are representing something which is about facts, and it's not about what is right and what is wrong, whether it's good or bad. It is where we are, your view, and your creativity is expressed based on those facts. How do you express your subjectivity about those facts then? Is it, for example, when you have chosen you've chosen 5 islands here, or you're at the 8th and you have 10, is it when you choose those islands that you express subjectivity by choosing the theme, or are you trying to be away from subjectivity?
I try to be like away from subjectivity.
But when you choose your themes, like sustainability and power, like
it's because
you're choosing them. They're not coming randomly.
No, it's what I'm reading. It's nourished by what I'm reading, and also it's because it's really important matter in society, sustainability, and of course it's linked to what we are, like the news, for example, like we are listening a lot of things about ecology, things like that. So of course it's related to, I'm in the present, like you have news, you have ideas from the present, from now. Like I read news every morning for like 20 minutes, and then I go, like I will read or listen a podcast about the past related to those news. It's like what you see at the moment, you want to explore this kind of topic in the past and have a vision in the future. You know what I mean? It's like really, I think it's related to nowadays, the news, the things like that, and then to my readings linked to those kind of news. And of course it goes like, I have imagination and I go all over the place, but I think it's related to that. But I do not choose like an island, okay, this island number 1 will be that, it comes. I know the general topic and I don't want to be...
So it's not like you have 20 islands or in your
it's
mind, and you say, I'm going to do only 10, and then you select, but by the selection,
the selection will come by itself. Okay. It's like I don't want to... The thing is, like, I don't want to be
you don't want to choose because you don't want to be constricted. Okay.
But I want to tell you, like, if I have 10 islands, I don't even know why, but I know I have 10 islands. It's really strange. It's like for me, I call it the lizard brain. It's the thing, because even in the paintings, I discover new things. People take psychotrope to develop things. It's like for me, it's like my brain is on one side and I have like, I'm thinking of something else. Like it's really strange the way I work, but I know when I'm doing a painting, I'm not on the subject I'm doing. Because you need to let go a certain liberty of your brain, which is the most interesting thing, because it's when you implement deeper things that you can catch, you analyze, but you need to let them go by themselves, not to be biased or not to have like to be too subjective. the topic. It's hard to explain. Like, for me,
I'll
it's
go
clear,
back
right?
to what Terry is saying, because in fact, we're dealing now with the creative process.
Yes.
But also selection. Because I review sometimes to select something is to be biased. Because the minute you take something, you put something else
Yeah, on the side.
on the side. And using algorithmics or something very mathematical led us to think, oh, this is it's all about sciences. But what you're describing right now is a creative process.
Completely.
So it's really different. And basically, it's almost, your creative process is really what you call, when you talk about dematerialization, you think about the creative process is that you take all those elements and then boom, something happens. But again, I will go back to Terry's idea, like when you pick, so you said you don't really pick a topic, but the topic
Comes to me.
comes to you. So it's like the muse to be
Yeah.
inspired.
And sometimes it's topics I've read or written about like a few weeks before or a few years before, because as soon as you get interested by something, it's somewhere. And you know you will talk about it, you will implement it, but it's somewhere. And so that's why I go like any kind of field, and I don't have any, I can go everywhere. Like I'm interested by everything.
Yeah, and just to bounce back on this idea, unconscious bias is something that you cannot deny really. And it's part of you, it's part of who you are, how you've been raised, and it's more and more studied in society and the hiring process, for example. Unconscious bias is something that you cannot say doesn't exist. You may try to avoid it, but it is who you are. Yeah. So it is kind of
It's
subjective.
But you try not to be as much as you can, but you always, because you are a human entity.
And good, otherwise we wouldn't have this type of results at the end if it wasn't you.
So Emily and I are friends because we're both painters. And my name's Tara. Anyway, I am curious. My work is 180 degrees opposite. It's very intuitive, very abstract, hard to even read images, though you're tempted to. But I'm curious, just from the visual point of view, knowing you and how deliberate the thinking is. I mean, right, we're all smart people are very curious about almost everything. I mean, I do a lot of research and reading. It's not necessarily as clear in what I'm looking at. But I do think that you have an intuitive approach in other visual aspects of what you're doing. And I'd love to hear about things like how you select color.
Mm-hmm.
Color for, like drawing Jacqueline in, and the visual language, because it's very successful. And I think sometimes we can get a little lost in the web of the information you're giving that could cloud the appreciation of your intuitive visual language. So could you talk a little bit about anything that question or statement triggers?
About the colors, it's really like, we have a joke in the family, like I have a sense of colors. And she knows how to pick colors. It's like for me, I just have to bring them together. It's hard to explain, in fact. They goes well together, and also the topic is not really fancy. So I guess the soft colors are here to maybe soften or maybe attract people. I agree with you, and my husband is telling me that, like, don't stop bearing people with your concepts. You're all about the concepts. And sometimes, like, I talk about the concept for like not even the technique or the painting by itself, like just about the concept. And I think it's because for many, many years I had, like, since I'm a kid, I did art, but I couldn't express myself. but I had so many things to say, so many ideas, and now that I can talk and express myself, maybe I really want to catch the time with like being very strong on the concept more than on the artworks, because I've done so many artworks and I couldn't say a word. Like you would have seen me like 10 years ago, I would have shake and I couldn't talk, and you were asking me what is the painting about. But I had so many ideas, and now I went over that. Maybe it's because I'm older, so I don't really care what people think. It's what I've learned. I'm like, now I don't care. I have a goal, I have to pursue a goal, and I'm doing it. That's it. And I'm like, really, and you are not going to shut me down. But for me, the best part of my time is when I paint. I need to paint. If I do not paint or do an installation, I'm dying. It's like, it nourishes me. Because it's the only way I can express all my ideas. I have so much in my head, like for years and years and years. If I can be translated into a robot, I will be fine. Because I have so much things to say, and the only way I can tell them is through the art.
I'm curious about one thing. I'm noticing that your veils, that they seem more organic in their shapes. And you were talking about like
The waves.
yeah, I'm just curious, like, because everything else seems so angular, which makes sense with math and algorithms if you're looking at it in a visual context. It's just like, can you talk a little about that? Like, what made you choose these specific shapes? Because even some of them, they're angular, but then, I mean, in most of your paintings, you have this curvature. And it's very curious because I feel like it visually does something very interesting. Are you going to use that in your installation, like somehow visually?
No, it's
all angular.
Yeah, it's only lines. I think it's because I use like you have like ink, and it's the organic side of the. It's like even if we get dematerialized, you always have an organism. So you always have an organic something which is organic.
Do you think it's also part of your art process? Because you talk about how initially your first treatment is almost like a reflection of what you've read. Like when you speak about what you're reading and what you're painting, they sound like you're approaching them with that same similar process, which is very interesting to me. I found it very inspiring. Do you think it's a part of that?
I think it's the same way. Like when I do the ink. I work vertically speaking, so the ink can drop and mess up. And when I do the shapes, it's the same thing because you need to go very fast. If you don't go fast, it gets messy. And I like to have exactly what I want to have. And so it's really like maybe to put yourself at risk.
Yeah.
So it's like also linked maybe to human nature.
Yeah.
Beautiful, like, friend Émilie, I think that was a great evening. And if you